I'm going to tell you a little bit about Personville Press and how that came about. In 2008, I published an interview with Jack Matthews, an author I admired. I had been emailing him about various things, and I couldn't understand why he was having so much difficulty getting published. In fact, all of his books were out of print, despite getting good reviews. In 2010, I traveled to Athens, Ohio to interview Mr. Matthews and to pitch the idea of publishing some of his book projects as ebooks. Jack Matthews agreed, but first I had to come up with a name for my press. I played around with several ideas. One idea was to name it after a random Texas town with a quirky name. I happened upon Personville, which was a small town southeast of Dallas. Personville resonated on a metaphorical level. You could think of a novel as a kind of small town whose inhabitants were the creation of a single person. I once stopped by Personville during a road trip and took a few selfies. It was founded by B.D. Person, and the town's postmaster was William Person. The town was basically a single stop on the Texas Central Railroad, and its population diminished after a big fire in 1916. Today, all that's left is a road sign and a dangerous highway intersection. Since 2010, Personville Press has published about 16 books. 2/3 of them are by dead authors and 1/3 are by living authors. I'm a literature fiend who loves all kinds of fiction, but especially short stories, existential fiction, and European fiction. Think of Franz Kafka, Milan Kundera, Borges, Italo Calvino, Dino Buzzati. I got my master's degree in creative writing in my early 20s, taking workshops with wonderful authors like Robert Flynn, John Barth, Stephen Dixon, J.M. Coetzee, Joyce Carol Oates. After teaching at Eastern European universities for 3 years, I worked as a technical writer for various IT companies for over a decade. I edit and format all the ebooks for my press. Eventually, I hope to publish my own writings through Personville Press. In 2025, my essay collection, Non-Crappy Things for My Blog, will come out. I've been blogging since the year 2000, and yes, it's taken me this long to finally make an ebook out of it. Ebook formatting can be tricky. You need to know the capabilities and limitations of the different platforms. You need to make sure that the book renders well on a phone, a tablet, or Kindle. With printed books, you only have to worry about how things look on pages of a certain size. With ebooks, you need to worry about how things render on displays of multiple sizes. For a micropress like Personville Press, marketing can be practically impossible. There's no brick and mortar stores around to sell your books, and most libraries have never heard of you. Very few places publish book reviews anymore, especially of indie titles. For the moment, the new vogue for book marketing seems to be producing short, flashy videos or doing podcast interviews. Exhausting. I bought my first ebook reader in 2003. It was great. The best thing about it was having access to public domain books. In that first year, I discovered books and authors I never even knew existed. It really shook my world. Of course, most of these books came from Project Gutenberg. For about a decade, I was a volunteer proofreader for Gutenberg. It was fun and exciting. I proofread many kinds of books. I even enjoyed working on the non-literary titles. I remember proofreading the journals of James Cook, the 18th century explorer who traveled around the world. The writing was rather dry, but the descriptions of the worlds he saw and the animals he encountered was unforgettable. Let me recommend a few Gutenberg titles. Old Wives' Tale by Arnold Bennett. This was the first bona fide masterpiece I encountered on my ebook reader. It's a beautiful and tragic character portrait of two sisters as they grow old. Why had I never heard of this author before? Penrod by Booth Tarkington. Tarkington is a very distinguished American novelist, and this novel is a very frivolous novel about a young boy with a wild imagination. I laughed hard on every single page of this novel. A Rebellious Heroine by John Bangs. This was a great metafictional romp about an author who creates a female character who literally runs away from him. A very funny premise. And I'm happy to report that not only was it well executed, Bangs has also written a stack of similar kinds of Bangsian fantasies as well. The Wind by Dorothy Scarborough. I thought I'd throw in this Texas psychological novel about a woman on the Texas plains whose isolation drives her crazy. Scarborough is an icon of Texas literature, known for editing several anthologies of ghost stories, and she wrote this under a pseudonym, causing all sorts of scandals. Literature in the Making by Some of Its Makers by Joyce Kilmer. Kilmer is a U.S. poet and critic who tragically died at the age of 31 on the French battlefield during World War I. His main claim to fame is a short, sentimental poem called Trees. I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree. I stumbled upon this wonderful collection of literary interviews that he wrote for the New York Times during the 1910s. Kilmer did future readers a great service by trying to understand the literary sensibilities of each author and what they were like in person. Perhaps if he'd lived longer, Kilmer would have written many great original works. But this little book of interviews is still remarkable and insightful. Each ebook published by Personville Press has an interesting backstory. Here are two favorites. Interview with the Sphinx is an esoteric existential play that Jack Matthews wrote. It's incomprehensible at times and wildly funny. It's completely bonkers. Matthews published it in the 1990s. As a play, it is totally unproducible. There are gigantic monologues and not much stage action. It's a very static play. It's just a mysterious sphinx wearing dark glasses and an interviewer who keeps asking her questions, which she refuses to answer. I love this play and pitched to Mr. Matthews the idea of publishing both as an ebook and as an audio play. Mr. Matthews agreed, but by the way, it turns out he had totally revised the play, added another act, and added 2 more characters. That made the task of producing a new edition unbelievably challenging. First, the revision actually contained a fair number of typos and mistakes, which is perfectly normal. I had to carefully compare the revision with the original version. The play itself is about the inadequacy and incomprehensibility of language. For the revision, it was fiendishly difficult to figure out which parts were supposed to be incomprehensible and which parts were accidentally incomprehensible. Fortunately, Mr. Matthews was on hand to clarify. Third, there comes a point in the play where the language becomes so absurd and paradoxical that my head explodes every single time I get to it. I was afraid that you couldn't get actors talented enough to pull off this dialogue. Fortunately, I found a pair of exceptionally talented actors who did it. Now, when you listen to the play, you can enjoy the comedy of it without first needing a PhD in linguistics or Greek philosophy. The final challenge has to do with ebook formatting. I produced the book in 2013, when ebook standards were primitive at best. It was difficult to format the indents and verse in a way that worked across reading systems. During that time, I cursed the Kindle format every single night. I'm happy to report that formatting ebooks has become a lot easier since that time. One doesn't normally think of reading a play, but I'm happy to have played a part in making the play available, regardless of whether you want to read it or hear it. I'm also proud of publishing an annotated version of the novel My Heart for Hostage by Robert Hillier. A literary blogger named Brad Bigelow praised this novel about a romance between an American soldier and a French girl after World War I. I did some research and discovered that the copyright for this novel had expired and that the book had been published at the most unfortunate times, November 1942, a month before Casablanca had been released. The US had already entered the war, but France was under Nazi control, and the Allied forces were nowhere close to liberating them. Certainly it was a time for Americans to feel nostalgic about French culture and the arts. But this novel was about the wrong war, and American readers in 1942 were far more interested in reading about the current war than past ones. I was excited to digitize this novel. The author was a Pulitzer-winning poet whose poetry had fallen out of favor. Hillier certainly knew how to evoke Paris and the poetry of passion and heartbreak. Besides being a beautiful novel, Hillier seemed to know Paris inside and out. I discovered many things while doing research for my critical essay about the novel. In one chapter, a woman sings a song, and I found the very song on YouTube, a recording made in 1917. Another scene where the narrator buys a ticket on an ocean liner. He mentions a delightful man named Dantec, who worked as a purser on the SS Chicago ocean liner. I found a website which publishes passenger lists on old ocean liners, and sure enough, I found Dantec's name on it. A scene in the novel mentions a death mask made from the face of an unknown woman who died from drowning. To my surprise, I learned that this death mask was well known. There was even a Wikipedia page about this death mask with an actual photograph. Many novels fall into obscurity, but this is a great and memorable novel with beautifully wrought sentences. I'm proud to have played a part in helping another generation rediscover this unforgettable novel. I know people talk about movies and video games being more culturally relevant than novels, but finding top quality fiction at affordable prices has never been easier or cheaper. Milan Kundera once wrote that the sole raison d'etre of a novel is to discover what only the novel can discover. As much as I love a good sitcom or movie, I'm shocked by how often I pick up a novel and find something deliciously unexpected or profound. Reading is a way for people to discover lost worlds, lost truths, and lost joys.